4 or 5. I got a quorum. I'm learning. All right. Good evening. It is 6 p.m. on Thursday, February 23rd, and I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order and ask that we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. And will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Richardson? Mr. Lopez? Ms. Kavanaugh? Dr. Rodriguez? Rachel Willis?
Present.
Robin Moore?
Present.
Caitlin Kavanaugh? Oh, sorry. My apologies. Rosalind Williams? Dr. Body? Quorum is present.
Thank you. I am aware that Dr. Kavanaugh and Ms. Logie were going to be absent this meeting. Hopefully, Dr. Body will be joining us. I am checking to see if we have any additions to the agenda. Do not believe we have any, which takes us to public comment on agenda items, of which we have none. Oh, that brings us to Dr. Sue Wheeler, who I believe is here to give us our health and wellness update.
Are you ready for me now? I'm sorry. I was just trying to slip up here so I wouldn't interrupt him, and I guess I'm first. So, would you?
Go ahead. Take it away, Sue.
Well, thank you for having me before the board again for our monthly update. As you'll hear, I'm recovering from a little bit of laryngitis, but I'm happy to be with you tonight. So if we begin with the COVID updates, last week, Ingham County reported a 13% increase in COVID cases overall. This was the first rise in 8 weeks. The state of Michigan reported a big jump in COVID deaths, rising from 43 to 63 last week, which reflects a 47% increase over the week. For the district, our COVID outlook is better. In January, COVID cases among students and staff were at the lowest level since September. There were no school, sports, or club-related outbreaks reported. So far, our February numbers are remaining stable too. In January, there were 46 student cases, with the highest numbers reported at the 3 high schools, which has been our trend since the return to school. We had 30 staff cases, which were distributed fairly evenly across the district. When reviewing the case trends this school year, January represents a continued downward trend, with our lowest number of monthly cases reported this school year. This was surprisingly good news. As we remain in the recovery phase of the pandemic, identifying community needs and putting supports and services in place has been essential. One intervention in our community is the creation of the Health Equity Council, or HEC. The Ingham County Health Department and the Capital Area Health Alliance joined together to create the Health Equity Council. The mission of the Health Equity Council is to address COVID-19 related inequities among Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities within Ingham County. The research shows that the pandemic has disproportionately impacted racial and ethnic minorities throughout Ingham County and across the country. The HEC was created to address these and other health inequities in our region. The HEC invited grant proposals with an interest in BIPOC-focused interventions to address these COVID inequities. The COVID team submitted a proposal to provide no-cost, tangible, personal, and home goods to our school, BIPOC community, and to identify BIPOC-focused resources within our school and within our community. The tangible goods are personal health care items such as hair care products, skin care products, and basic home needs, which may pose a financial burden to our families. The items selected were chosen intentionally for our BIPOC students and families. We are pleased to report that we have been one of just 12 organizations to receive this grant funding. Beginning in March, students will self-select products and goods electronically via a QR code or by completing a paper order form. Selected items will be delivered to the student's school or may be picked up at the Halleck Center. We collaborated with the FORT program, students and staff to avoid duplication of services and to identify desired products and personal care items for our students. Providing tangible goods and services offers support and connection to our families as they recover from this long-standing economic and personal impact that has been the COVID pandemic. As with any recovery, connection, community, and intentional intervention are the best forecasters of success. During Black History Month, I'm especially reminded of the words of former President Barack Obama. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Thank you for your commitment to change through innovative service and intentional intervention for all of our school community.
Thank you, Sue. I appreciate you coming in, especially with your laryngitis. And I also appreciate that as we move forward with our health and wellness monthly conversation, it's not just now about COVID, but it's about all of the other things that we're doing. And thanks to you and Executive Director Cordelia Black, the entire Office of School Culture is really thinking holistically about health and wellness. So I really appreciate that. And
Thank you.
I certainly turn it over for questions from the board.
Any questions, Dr. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you very much. And you have a lot of merit to be here. But looking at the students, the high schools are the ones who are having more students than the other ones. Is because the number of the students in the buildings, or there are younger students are having more cases than 15 years old? How is the proportion there?
I think all of those things are true. In the high schools, there's more students, so you may have more cases. But also, the high school students tend to be more engaged out in the community. They're out doing more things, so they may be more likely to come in contact with COVID and then be positive from that. The younger students tend to be at school or home.
And the same thing with the staff.
And the staff the same way. The staff are, bringing COVID to us at school from all of their activities, whether it's out in the community, recreation, family gatherings, that sort of thing.
These schools, they are having more cases. Are they having some procedures to avoid this thing that happen? Or?
Well, we still are doing really robust contact tracing. We're a little bit alone in that our district continues to do that. So if we have cases at school, we do look at what are the connections at school? Is this coming to school or from school? And how can we reduce the spread once someone is positive at school?
Then how many days the students are missing because of the school, because the the COVID.
Yeah, it's much better this year because we did take the CDC and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Service recommendation that if a student is a contact, they may remain at school, and we are testing them on days 3 and 5 after exposure. So we're keeping them in school, which has made a tremendous difference in days lost at school.
Okay, Mr. Richardson.
Thank you, Madam President. This could be for Ben or you. So since our last meeting, the presidential administration has said, hey, we're this fall or the spring, pardon me, at the end of April, start of May, we're going to change or end the healthcare crisis. Does that change anything we're doing or to any degree?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the question. What I am really thankful of, and a lot of this credit goes to Sue and her team and Cordelia and her team, is we've been doing really well following our own rules. As far as I can tell, there's really no reason for us to change anything. I certainly would defer to Sue and the team, but what's been nice is we also find that a lot of our mitigation strategies, like having hand sanitizer and washing our hands and cleaning things, is reducing things like flu and all this other stuff. So, we appreciate that the federal government certainly has to do what it needs to do to get people, back to work and doing that kind of stuff. But, with our schools, we actually seem to find it is really good and people seem to like it. But I'll defer to Sue if there's anything else you want to add to that.
I agree completely that we would plan to just stay the course. The benefits have been positive overall.
That's fantastic. And that's what I had hoped to hear, because obviously there's more benefits than obviously this COVID brought this to us. But I think this is a great change to keep as long as we can afford it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Vice President Moore?
Yes, my question is about the mini grant. I'm glad to see that we were awarded that. So it looks like we've got one of the 12 regional mini grants, and that's addition to other funds that we had that we supplied, like tangible goods and items for students, right? Okay, so this is just additional money.
Additional funding.
Okay, that's great. I'm curious to know how much the grant was.
It was $10,000.
Okay, $10,000. All righty.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Madam President. This probably is for our superintendent more so. But when children are have COVID and they have to go home, do we are they online when they go home? So is that what happens, so they don't miss the school and their assignments?
Yeah, so no, thank you so much. I mean, one of the things that our district learned, as all districts learned, was how to have online learning. It's on a kind of case-by-case basis, of course, because if a kid is actually sick, they need to, recuperate. But certainly schools still have their Google Classrooms. Teachers still have access to it. Depending on the age, there's different assignments. But what's nice is we still have that infrastructure that has those Google Classroom possibilities. And, as you can see, what's great is our numbers are so low that we really can throw a lot of resources at 1 or 2 kids. If we remember last year, there were days where we had 100, 200, 300. But yeah, all of that stuff still is there. And what's nice, and not that anybody wants me to say this now, but we need to have these conversations about snow days and, about being online during those days as well. But Sue, I mean, from your standpoint, I know you're doing the exact same thing that we always did when a kid is sent home, making sure that they have access to things. And Jessica's not here to speak from a school's perspective, but that's exactly we're still doing that, which has been great because kids are hopefully not missing, when they're out.
Well, a follow-up question. So are they absent from school when they're in COVID, even if they're online learning?
Great question. I mean, I can turn it over to Christina to give you, the chapter and verse of the school code. If the child is at home and is online, there is a way for that child to not necessarily be absent. But if the child is sick, then it's usually considered absent. But I mean, Christina, if you want to go into some of the details, because we've spent a lot of time learning this.
Yes, I can a little bit. So like Ben said, if the student is actually home and ill and is not participating in anything, then they are marked absent ill, just like they would be if they had the flu or cold or whatever it might be when they're home. But if they are actively learning and participating in assignments and participating in a two-way contact with their teacher, then they're not absent. They're participating and meeting the virtual rules to be counted as having attendance.
So if they go home the day of and they're sick that day and they're not learning, so this, that, but the next day they get online and they start working, then
Yep.
they're-
Then it's not an absence that's
That's
counted
good,
against
right?
them.
And
That's
to get even more complicated, if it's an elementary school child and they were in school for half the day, but then went home the second half of the day, they're still counted present because they were there for the half day. If they're a high school kid, it goes period by period. So if the child was there for periods 1, 2, and 3, but absent 4 and 5, 6 because they were sent home, they'd be considered absent for those periods, but not for the first 3. It gets complicated. We're always happy to dork out on this, but the good thing, as you mentioned, Guillermo, and I really appreciate you bringing it up, is that if that kid's online the next day doing work, they're not absent, they're doing their thing.
And that's an important role that the COVID team does. We contact the parents, the guardians. We say, is your child sick today? We want to ensure they take the days to rest and recuperate. But when they're ready for learning, we make sure they know how to do that.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions? All right. Next on our agenda, we have our report from our superintendent. Mr. Superintendent?
All right. Good afternoon. Good evening, everyone. Never quite understood where evening and afternoon meet. But it's really good to be here. It feels like it's been a long time. It probably goes without saying that these last couple of weeks have been very difficult. They've been difficult for a lot of reasons. We sadly had a house fire with one of our families. There was a shooting in our community. And then there was the MSU tragedy that happened. And, I've written about it. A lot of people kind of heard my voice, I guess, through that. But it's important for us to all recognize that this is the first time that we've been back since that. And I think it's probably appropriate for us to take a moment of silence. But I want to add to that, and I hope this doesn't come off wrong, but it was an absolute tragedy. It was brutal and violent and scary and sad. But sadly, those events also happen in Lansing. And we don't necessarily always talk about that. And we don't have the same kind of overflow of positive thoughts and prayers and feelings and donations. And I would ask that we take some time to contemplate and to have a moment of silence for what happened at MSU, but also to all of the tragedies that we suffer in our communities, and to be thoughtful that things happen throughout our community and not just in one place. So if the board would be so gracious as to have a moment of silence. Thank you. So with that, not to continue on I guess, sad trajectory here, but as I wrote last week, it's important that we voice our feelings and our emotions. And if anybody's out there listening, if there's anybody in the audience, please know that we have a lot of resources at our disposal for you to talk to. These kinds of incidences are scary, and they're anxiety ridden, and they make people feel differently than almost anything else, because this is violence in a way that feels random, that feels just as you walk down the street, that anything can happen. And so certainly through the great work of Sue and Cordelia and the team, if anybody is listening to this and needs help, please just reach out to us. I have to say, one of the things that made me incredibly happy was after we released the superintendent's newsletter last week, we just put a sentence there. I wrote a sentence, right? That just said, hey, if you need anything, just please reach out. And people just emailed. They just said, you know what? I don't even know who to reach out to, but I want to talk to somebody, and people responded. And so I want people to understand that we are here for you. We are a community. The only way we get through this is through service. The only way we get through this is by supporting each other. And, we are a strong community, and things will bring us down, and we have to recognize that. But we really can move forward together. And I think that that's really, really important. This week, to change topics, after missing 2 days of school because of that and snow, this week we, of course, have missed 2 days of school this week. And I appreciate that all of you listening, however many it are, that the great question of snow days, how we call them, what goes on, what makes sense, how in the world we do it, is a really important thing that people probably wonder about all their lives, really. And I did, if anybody has access, of course, I did write a long treatise about this on January 29th, kind of explaining the whole thing, how we do everything. But I also appreciate that, shockingly, not everybody reads my newsletter, nor would they want to read 3 pages worth of my own writing. So I think it's probably important and helpful for me to spend some time just kind of explaining this, because, when you don't know about something, not through any fault of anybody else's, but it's like a closed box, people start to get ideas about what's going on and how does it work. And it's just always so much better to explain this, because I think what people saw this week was a day that was called where maybe you didn't need to. And then there was a day that was called a little bit later than others, and wondering why those kinds of decisions happen. So if the board doesn't mind, I'll go through a couple of things, because I think it's probably helpful for everybody to hear. So the first thing I would say is, of all the things a superintendent is involved in, we understand that snow days are really, really important. I have a text chain with all of the 11 other ISD superintendents, including the ISD superintendent for all, right? There's the Ingham ISD superintendent, and then there's 12 of us that are part of the ISD. So the 12 of us and 13, including the ISD superintendent, we're always texting about all of these things. In addition, I'm always texting with the mayor because, as you probably all know, we salt our own land, we salt what we do, but the mayor and the city are salting the roads. And there is a big difference in Lansing between what we would call primary roads, let's say at a Cedar or a Larch, and some of the more side roads, secondary roads, tertiary roads. And it's really important, especially for our elementary schools. For those of you, of course, that know our buildings, Eastern is on some big roads. Everett is kind of on some big roads, but Post Oak is, up on a hill. Forest View is like in a forest, so you've got a lot of roads that don't get treated the same. In addition to that, of course, when you think about our ISD, we're the urban center, right? We have paved roads. We have heat underneath some of our roads, right? If you think of the downtown area, there's steam underneath there. So what might be a frozen road 5 miles out of the city is actually slush and easy to get through in the middle. So again, we're always in contact. And the big important folks that we're in contact with are the superintendents of the area, the mayor, Dean, right? Because so many of you use the Dean transportation. So like last night, I was on the phone with Patrick Dean, the son of Kelly Dean, for 20, 30 minutes asking, how are the roads? What do you feel? What's going on? And, what we heard last night at, anywhere between 6 to 8 o'clock was, it doesn't look great, but we probably could take the buses out if we really needed to. What I heard from the mayor was that they're salting and that it doesn't look great, but we probably could get it out there if we needed to. The day before, which was so crazy, was the reports that we're getting were just like Armageddon. Right. And so one of the things that I write about in the newsletter is the one website that we really use, it's like the gold standard for the country, is called NOAA. right? That's the federal government, like that's where all the scientists are, and they are the ones that make the call. So I just want to read to you what NOAA wrote about Wednesday. Power outages and tree damage are likely due to ice. Travel could be nearly impossible. The hazardous conditions will greatly impact Wednesday. Travel is strongly discouraged. If you must travel, keep an extra flashlight, food, and water. Prepare for possible extended power outages. I hope anybody reading that would say, we should probably cancel school, right? Like you hear the federal government, no matter what you think of the federal government, when they tell you that, you really want to make that call. And so when it was pretty clear that that's what NOAA was saying, and other school districts in more rural, and I want to talk about this in a second, were calling it, we were starting to really think, okay, maybe we really need to. But the weird thing about Wednesday was it hadn't started snowing yet. Right? It hadn't really, there was nothing and I'm looking out the window and I'm seeing, but when you're told it could be Armageddon, you really want to take safety and security to the fore. So on Wednesday, we called it kind of with everybody else. We were texting back and forth. We did it I think like 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30, something like that. And we kind of went on our merry way. And then, of course, as I stayed up hours and hours waiting for something to happen and it never did, I feel really guilty. But it's also the right thing because that's kind of what you have to do. The other thing that we have to be real kind of clear about is, when a place like, I don't know, Weberville, I mean, and again, these are all places I'm learning about, right? Weberville or Stockbridge or, places like that are calling it. Those are very different places. Those are rural. Those are, so there have been days where we don't call and they do, and it's fine because it's a couple of inches of snow, but it's really still there. So what happened on Wednesday was the federal government's telling us it's Armageddon. You're hearing it. You just got to be careful. Then on Wednesday, it starts to finally rain and ice and sleet, but the reports we're getting is that it's going to stop at around 11 p.m. and that it's actually going to be warm enough, especially in Lansing, that the ice was going to kind of melt, and that for the big major roads, we might be okay. And so, here you are. And again, it's not just me. I want to be very clear here. And look, I'll take all the heat. Don't get me wrong. But, what's great about Lansing is we have a team. We have, a facilities director. We have a COO. We have all of the Sodexo staff who've been terrific through this. We have the city. We have a lot of folks. So it's not like, the superintendent is sitting there with a cigar and cognac looking at the window and going, oh, maybe I'll call the day, right? We don't do that. We take this stuff very seriously. And in fact, last night I was in, and this is why I say this, I drive my grandmother's 2003 four-door sedan with like mediocre tires. So if I can get through stuff, that's a pretty good indication that it's probably okay. Whereas our wonderful facilities director drives a 4x4. And when she says it's okay, I go, all right, let's see if my car can make it. And so on yesterday, I was on the roads at 7, at 8, and then at around 9:15, 9:30. And, again, I was driving. I went to a couple of schools. I was walking around. And, from what we were seeing from Lansing, it was unclear if we really needed to cancel. But what we saw, of course, was everybody else in the more rural places were canceling. And, when your Dansvilles or your Webervilles cancel, that's one thing. But when the ISDs are canceling, that means our CTE programs can't go. When, and that's both Eaton Risa and the Ingham ISD, then you start to go, okay, well, even if we probably could open up school, let's see what we can do. And I also appreciate that when people are at home at 9 o'clock looking out the window and it looks like a disaster, you go, oh my God, why don't you just cancel it? Well, it's because what we're seeing is that it's going to stop at 11 p.m. It's going to be okay. Things are going to melt. And, we take the decision to cancel school really, really seriously, which I'm going to get to in a second. But that's how this process works. So like on Wednesday, we got the information, Armageddon. Okay, let's just cancel with everybody else. And what was nice is all of us superintendents kind of text back and forth, and we try to make decisions collectively. We kind of say, all right, are all of you doing it? Okay, fine, let's do it. Because we also know that some of our teachers have kids in other districts. We know that some of the teachers in other districts have kids here. Like, we're all trying to be together on this, because it does make sense, even though the Lansing city has kind of its own weather in some respects. We know we're in this together, and that's the other thing too, is there's no real magic here, and I won't necessarily read all the things that I wrote, but there's a big difference between 4 inches of snow on a 35-degree non-windy day than 2 inches of ice on a 23-degree weather day in December. Why does the month matter? Well, December are short days. That means the sun's not coming up later. That means it doesn't get warm. There's a lot of things that we take into account. And so yesterday, look, it's the end of February. It's getting to March. The sun is rising more. You know that because it's getting lighter. So there's all these things that we're really thinking about. And that's why last night, even though it might have felt a little bit later, it was about an hour later than everybody else in the area. There were some real reasons for that. And the main reason, of course, was I was on the roads at 9:12 driving my jalopy around going, I could probably, I think we could do this. But then the moment we heard there was power outage, that's the game. Right? Because the last thing we want is for any families that don't have power, et cetera. But there's a flip side to this. And that's what I really want to talk about. And I appreciate the time here, is the decision we take as seriously as possible about shutting down schools is that we also recognize that not only are we an education facility, which we are. We have incredible teachers and principals and educators and assistants. Everybody's there to teach the kids. But we also are a place of refuge. We're a place of heat. We're a place of hot water. We're a place of food, 2 meals a day for 10,000 plus people. And so when you make a decision to close down a building, not just for one day, but 2 days in a row, that's thousands of families that might not be getting hot meals, 4 of them collectively in 2 days in a row. So you got to really think, is this the right call? Because there's another piece, is that we also know that parents have the right to keep kids home. So if you as a parent, because we trust the parents, if we make a decision to keep schools open, because we think it's the right thing to do, but you live in a place that is iced over and snowy and something's wrong, you're allowed to keep your kid home. That's okay. But the decision to close means that 10,000 kids can't get food, can't get heat, can't get love and support and nurturing in the schools. Now, they're getting love at home. I know they're getting support from home, but there's 8, sometimes 10, 15 hours when they're in the building that is a safe place for them and a place that they really want to be. So we take that decision really, really seriously. And it compounds when it's 2 days in a row. That first day, government's telling us, don't even leave, like batten down the hatches. Of course, we're going to call that. But that second day where we know it's going to stop, where we know things are getting better, where I'm literally out on the roads, and so was Katie, at 9:12, 9:15, we're driving around. That decision's tough, right? And so, yeah, did the other districts call it earlier? They did. And I think a lot of them were rural. A lot of them had things to do. And what we were saying, and again, these are team decisions, is what's the time where we really think people are starting to go to bed? And adults, right? The 6-year-old going to bed is not going to drive themselves to school. So the issue is, what time is the latest you possibly can do when you're making a decision? And, our thought is around 9:45. Now, for those of you who are as old as me, you might remember that, like, snow days used to be called the morning of, like, for real, right? And so this idea of calling snow days a full day ahead of schedule is great because it gives people a lot of time to work, but this is kind of a new thing. And so I appreciate people expect that, and that's fine. But when we're trying to really balance are we going to be shut down 2 days in a row with, do we think it's safe? Waiting till 9:30, 9:45, and that's when we called it. We put it out on social by 9:45. The text messages, the robocalls went out at like 9:47 or something like that. We felt that was still okay. Now, look, people can get angry, and I hear that. I mean, I even kind of said that in my thing is, look, everybody has the right to be upset, and bring it on me, right? But because at the end of the day, whatever, I'm the superintendent. But I want people to understand that these aren't individual decisions. These are decisions we do with dean, with other superintendents, with the mayor, with our custodial staff, with our facility staff. And, we all really need to kind of turn that key at the same time, because that decision to close isn't really just about, oh yeah, we don't want to go to school. It's 10,000 kids and families rely on us to be that place. And so again, if you, and I want to be very clear here, if you as a family member, you as a community member ever, and this is on a normal day that's just sunny, if you don't think you can make it to school for whatever reason, that's your prerogative, right? I mean, there's a piece of paper on the wall over there that says parents have rights, and they do. Now, you can't just be like, I don't want to send my kid because I don't like school. That's not how it works. But, you can certainly say, look, things are bad with our family today. We need a day. Or there was a tree that fell on our house and it had nothing to do with anybody else. We need a day. But when the school district makes that decision, that's for everybody. And let's also talk about, it's not just us, but it's parents who can't go to work because they got to take care of them, the kids. It's all of the other people that rely on the thousands and thousands and thousands of people here. So, look, in no way am I trying to be defensive about any of this, but I think the reason why I wrote such a long thing in the newsletter a couple of weeks ago is that we want to show you how we make these decisions. And I also appreciate that not everybody reads this stuff. So we want to, be as articulate as I possibly can. And, I do want, again, to leave you with that idea is that each of you have the power to make those individual decisions for you. You live on a steep hill. Okay, I hear you. That's your call. But there's 9,999 other people who don't live on that steep hill. And when we make those decisions, we've got to be really thoughtful. And look, I get all sorts of fun emails, right? I get the joking. My favorite is when I get teachers from other districts emailing me because they know if Lansing calls it, other school districts are more likely to call it. Those are always fun because, we can joke around it. And then and then when we get the more serious, like, how dare you not, call it my house is okay. That's your house. And I hear you. But you need to make that decision for yourself. We are trying very deeply to make the decision for all folks. And that's why the second day was a little bit later than the first day, because 2 days in a row with bad weather and heat and water and food and all that stuff, that adds to it. And that idea of, we were definitely going to try to call it before 10 because that's when we figured people were going to sleep or starting to make decisions. But in the past, we've called it as early as 4 p.m. So we really do want to call it early if we know it, but we didn't really know it. And even though all the other school districts called it in the area, we didn't know it because we were on the roads. We were driving, we were looking, we were seeing. And then the big thing was, we got a report that power was starting to go out in Hazlet. And when you hear that, you go, okay, that changes everything. And so we did. And that's why it all kind of happened that way. So, I hope this helps. I know it will not stop all of the fun emails I get about everything. But for those of you who are listening and those of you who really, are interested in how this works, I would say thank you for listening to this. Look at the newsletter. It was January 29th, where I kind of go through a lot of it. And then you can also just email us because we're always happy to explain that. So with that, that was a lot, sorry, but I give it back to Rachel.
All right. Thank you. Any questions, comments, board members? Mr. Lopez.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Superintendent. A question in terms of school district and city. Do we have a like an agreement? For example, we have the transported buses, right? And we know what the routes are, the routes. Okay. Does the city clean those before they do others in the city? I'm not talking about the main roads. Yeah. I'm talking about the city streets, where the neighborhoods, and because if they do, I want to make my street a route. No, but in all seriousness, no. Do they
Yeah, so
Do
no,
they
it's,
take priority?
yeah, it's interesting. So it's actually something, and I got to give a lot of credit to the mayor and the team, is they give priority to CATA bus routes. They also give priority to the main thoroughfares. What we've been trying to talk about is giving priority to our school bus routes
Mhm.
because those are not city, it's us. It's a little bit different. And I will say, I mean, I'm allowed to, I guess, talk about this, is one of the things that I'm trying really hard to negotiate with the city, and they've been wonderful about it. So we're just trying to figure this out about indemnification, is could we start to plow some of the streets around the schools because we have the equipment to do our own parking lots? Why not do maybe the block around Lions or something like that? The issue with that is just liability, right? We hit a parked car, we don't really want to pay for it. When the city does it, they have their own stuff. So what we work on is the CATA routes, and again, because of our high school kids, they're taking CATA, so that's a big deal. The main thoroughfares, and then trying to highlight where our schools are and seeing if we can get some more of those secondary roads. But if they go to schools, saying, "Hey, we can do that." So we're working on it.
Yeah, well, yeah, because the bus, for example, in my neighborhood, there's 2 streets where I see buses going, and the streets are not clean.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking, not just around the school building, but in terms of the bus route.
Yeah, and you mean like the yellow buses?
Yeah,
the
the
school
yellow
buses.
Yeah, our school buses.
Yeah, so we're working on that because for the mayor, and I understand that he's got to run the city, they focus on the main roads, the secondary roads. Where our school bus goes, that's not necessarily what they, so we're trying to work with them about, hey, these are where our school buses go. Can you prioritize that? And they've been receptive, but it's different than what they do.
Well, we pay taxes for all the streets, okay? So
They
I don't
do.
know.
They do.
And I think that
We
there should
do.
be some priority because of the safety of the kids.
Yeah.
Of
No,
our
I appreciate
residents.
that. I appreciate that.
I don't know.
Hey, thank you. Any other?
I'm sorry, you all. This is kind of a problem.
Ms. Williams.
Um, uh, Thank you, Superintendent, for that explanation. However, there is still, I noticed we didn't talk a little about the parents that are getting the gas cards or the students. Are we considering all of that when we're thinking about, because where we live, there is yellow school bus routes. Some of the kids have to walk about a mile to get to the CATA. So I literally watched the ice skating game yesterday and today, trying to see how it's going to work. But are we considering those? Because I know it's a lot of those students.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Right. I mean, so the issue is, the high school kids that are taking CATA, are the roads where they walk to the bus, are those clean? Right. And again, that's, and we forget not just the CATA folks, we also have just straight walkers where you've got, kids that live there. So yeah, I mean, it's always that balancing act, right? And that's why, again, if a family feels like it is unsafe for their child to go, they really don't have to send them, especially on days like that. But, and that's why we called it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the decision was made both for Wednesday and today. I mean, I really don't think we're going to do it tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, every kind of kid we're trying to take into a consideration. So you've got your yellow buses, you've got your CATAs, you've got your walkers, you've got your kids that have to walk to the CATA or kids that walk to the yellow. You've got drivers. I mean, and let's be honest, the scariest driver is the teenage driver that just got their license. And that's almost all of the high schools. So we definitely are trying to take all of that into consideration.
Well, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We certainly appreciate the unique complexity of navigating, making those decisions, and know that whenever the decision is made, it's to keep kids safe. But it's certainly complex, and it's hard to throw us all in the same bucket as our surrounding districts because of our setup. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, and then I have one more thing that's not buses,
please.
but I wanted to make sure
yes,
you're.
Yes, no, that's good. All right, thank you.
Oh, great. Well, and really, again, to the board, thank you for not only giving me time to explain, but all of your support about this, because I mean, you really do understand that these kinds of things, safety, security, the buses, the snow, it's something we all get hit. I'm sure that people reach out to you and be like, why didn't you do something? You're like, I'm a board member. Like, that's not how this works, you know? And so I really do appreciate the position you're in. So thank you for that. And as a treat, we have a did you know? So, John, you want to hit it?
Before we start this video, excuse me, sorry about that. Before we start this video, I wanted to mention we do have a Black History Month video that we are working on. We wanted to capture some events that were happening this month, so that's why it's not being played this month. But in the next board meeting, we will be playing that. So I just wanted to point that out. So, but tonight we are going to play a video about the Ebersol Center, which is located about an hour west of here. And one of the great things that happened a couple weeks ago is there was a school visit, and Ron, our videographer, photographer, was able to go over there with his daughter for a couple nights. And this was his daughter's class that he was able to capture. And so this is a few-minute video about the wonderful things that are happening at Ebersol.
And then this is where your food will go in. Demonstration for me. Yummy fishy.
Mother wants to make that country. Are you gonna try the green one?
Don't panic. Put out. Hold up like you're pulling out everything here. The story, okay? The sleep at the Jackson farm. You didn't even know these people. You're just trying to sell them.
I'm just thrilled that we still dissect owl pellets. So just glad that that's still a thing. Sure thing, Mrs. Moore.
I'm still thrilled. I'm thrilled that Camp Eversaw exists because I went there in 1978. I'm telling my age, you all. So it's evolving. Thank you for the work that's being done there. I love it. Yes, 1978.
I'll just remind you, I was born 10 years after that trip of yours to Camp Eversaw. Any other questions, comments? All right, thanks. That also just set the bar for 2023's Did You Know video, so no pressure, guys. Next, we are on to our routine matter and routine business. So we are going to go through our committee report. So first up is facilities. Do we have facilities report this evening, Mr. Lopez?
Yes. Well, for both committees, I have no report
Okay, all
because
right.
we have not met.
No
Well, I'll
facilities.
just share that we did have a meeting of the executive of the Promise, and we're looking at evaluation of the executive director.
Thank you. Next, personnel committee. Mrs. Moore, is there a personnel committee?
No, I don't have a report, but I do want to share that we're meeting March 24th at 3 p.m.
Okay, that'll be the next personnel committee meeting.
Yes.
This is going to go by really fast. We are going to move the finance committee report to March 2nd. So we don't have that either. Policy. Oh, I think we do have an update on policy. Policy, Dr. Rodriguez.
Madam President, we didn't meet, but we had been in conversations with Neola and also with the administration about the policies they are going to present for the second reading and for the approval tonight. Then, but we had been in communication, and even now is the same format. We have it 2 or 3 weeks ago. As soon as we approve them, they will be sending to Neola to put in the format the other policies are. Thank you, Madam President.
Wonderful, thank you. So we do have our second reading of the electronic use policy during testing and use of that. Mr. Richardson.
Madam President, just to correct it, it's March 1st is the next finance report, just for the notes.
That's the next financial meeting. The report will be on the March 2nd.
Correct.
You got it. All right, thank you.
Do you send to us the appointment for committees?
I did. If I owed everybody another resend on that and I failed to do that, I apologize. And I
No,
will
you
do
don't
that.
need to apologize.
Okay, I'm sorry. I will make sure I resend the committee assignments. Absolutely.
Thank you. I think
Sure thing. Okay, next is an update on the Equity Advisory Committee. Just wanted to note that that committee is continuing to meet bi-weekly. It was scheduled to meet this evening, but due to make sure that everyone was safe and with our staff that were possibly going to be in attendance, we did cancel this evening. Working through, we have separated into 2 working groups. One is focused on sort of the student safety aspect implementation of the equity report, and the other one is focused on the academic update reports of the implementation plan for the equity audit. And so we are just continuing to work through those plans so that we can come back with some recommendations to the board. That is all that I have this evening for committee reports. Next, we are going to move on to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda this evening includes the approval of our January 26th regular meeting minutes, our January 28th minutes from our board retreat, and then the meeting minutes from our February 9th information study session. May I have a motion?
Madam President,
Mrs. Moore.
I move, oh my gosh.
You move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as presented.
Yes, that's exactly what was on my mind.
Thank you.
I lost my train of
All
thought.
right,
Thank you.
It's been moved by Mrs. Moore, supported by Dr. Rodriguez. Are there any, oh no, all those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, consent agenda is approved. Next, we are moving on to a recommendation that we move into closed session. I do need the motion read as printed in the agenda, please.
Madam President,
Dr. Rodriguez.
I move the Board of Education moves at the closing section according with the policies of the act, and then we go in closed session. Usually use something like that.
Thank you. It's been moved by Dr. Rodriguez that pursuant to Open Meetings Act, Section 8D, that we move into closed session to consider the purchase or lease of property. It's been moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Mrs. Williams. I'm gonna get it right one of these days, Rosalind, I promise. Are there any questions or comments? All right, I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote, please. Sorry, roll call vote, sorry.
Mrs. Willis,
Yes.
Mrs. Moore,
Yes.
Ms. Williams, Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
Mr. Lopez,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
and Dr. Body. Please.
All right, that's okay. Dr. Body had to step away, which means the motion passes 6-0. So at 6:55 PM, we are in closed session. It's not homework, I promise. And for my friends over here, I just also wanted to mention there's an entire component of that model that's focused on cultural competency and integration, which is why I'm thrilled about it. Okay, so we are out of closed session. Moving on to our action items. Our only action item for us this evening is the second reading and adoption of the use of electronic devices policy. May I have a motion?
Madam President.
Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. I move that the Board of Education approve the second reading and adoption of the use of electronic devices for students and staff during testing.
Thank you. It's been moved by Dr. Rodriguez, supported by Ms. Williams. Any questions or comments on this policy that we received on the 9th?
Madam President, I want to thank all the board members and the people in the policy committee and the administration for moving this so rapidly. Really took difficult time, but approving them now is proper, and I hope we will help the students and the teachers during the testing days coming.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. There were a couple questions during the first reading on the 9th. I think I answered them without messing anything up. So I think we're good.
I never had a better substitute.
Yeah, hopefully I was good subs too. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of second reading and adoption, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, motion passes 7-0. Couldn't remember how many was here today. Okay, next we are on to our report from Secretary and Announcements. Dr. Rodriguez.
Thank you very, very much. I want to appreciate and love what the superintendent said about the suffering that our community is having for the last few days. And this board also, and the board that represents many, many people in Lansing, we want to express our deepest sympathy and concern for Michigan State University students, faculty, staff, and community in response to the tragic event of last week. Hillary Wadless, ASD teacher at Garner, won 1,000 from Gobot Orthodontics for use in her classroom. Award will be televised in WLNS channel 6 February already there, February 13, 2023. Congratulations to Hillary. So Sodexo sponsoring Future Chef National Challenges district-wide. Enter by February 28. Then did you feel that you are going to win? Go. Understanding Feeling Nurturing Parenting Series sponsored by Community Learning Center, Monday, February 27 from 6:30 p.m. from 6 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. It's virtual free. Our next board meeting will be here March 2nd at 6 o'clock. The ISS meeting will be March 9th at Eastern High School, 6 p.m. And our regular meeting in March 16 here also at 6 p.m. That is conclude our announcements. Thank you very much. I do not have a question for me, but I want to hear how was the meeting, and you were in Everett, right? Dwight Ridge, okay, Dwight Ridge even. How was the feeling? If anything we had to change, we are going to have the next one in Sex and Eastern High School. Go Quakers. Then how we want to do it. I want personally, when I ask for that, is because I want to know what the district, what the school is doing, what is going on in that school. Just to have a meeting, and to have different walls doesn't mean too much to me. But I want to know from the principal, from somebody else, what is there in that school that I need to know at this time. And I that is the reason. And take time, because if we don't know the schools, we don't know anything. Then I think that then what the superintendent decide how to do it, that is not my role. But I think that if the board decide, it's okay with me to really find out about the culture, what is going to school, how we can help, how we can do things better.
I think that's something we can carry over into our next site visit. Sure. Any other, let's see, we're on to public comment, for which we have none. Any other comments from board members this evening?
The Tedesco food competition, if you guys have never seen it or been to it, it's really, really fun. I actually have a champion back there. Third place a couple years ago. I'm actually surprised this year he didn't want to compete, but they're also focusing on healthy. So for you parents who are watching, staff, everybody, encourage your family to do it together. We did it together. We made it an adventure. We went to Borax. We went to different exotic. So he created the perfect. It can be a family project, even though the student from the district is competing, but it creates family involvement. It creates a new type of creating meal planning. It creates everything, but then we as a board should go and support and see. I was just kind of smiling when I saw it. No, that's not their mom. I'll win. So, I think we should actually encourage people to do this.
Yeah. And there's been opportunities when board members have even been guest judges in the competition in the past. So yeah, it's definitely a great event. Mr. Lopez.
Yes, just to remind the members that this weekend is the MASB Winter Institute. So I'll be online tomorrow and Saturday. So I hope others take advantage of it as well.
Depends on how many classes you signed up for, because I'm tomorrow and Sunday.
Sunday, I leave it up.
Sure, Mrs. Moore.
Yes, Trustee Little G and I will be at the Fledge for our coffee and conversation. So please join us there. We welcome everybody to come. It's really laid back. We want to hear from you. So yeah, we'll be there at the Fledge from 12 until 1. The Fledge is located, I don't know, on Eureka, I think. Shame on me. If you're following me on Facebook, look on my Facebook page. But yeah, we'll be there. Coffee and conversation with Trustee Little G and myself.
To confirm, this is Saturday, February 25th.
Oh my gosh, you're the best. Yes, I've checked out Saturday of February 25th. So
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from board members? All right, seeing none at 7:24, we are adjourned.
Oh my gosh, thank you.